the MasterMine End Users webinar. Today we'll be going over how MasterMine can help you with GoldMine administration. So, as usual, Rob Makalak will be our presenter, and I will let him go ahead and take it away. Go for it, Rob.
All right, thank you so much, Carnegie, and welcome everybody. I have been looking forward to doing this webinar for some time now because it's got some of my favorite topics in it, what we're going to be focusing on today is, as Carnegie said, tools and tricks for GoldMine administration. As you know, those of you who are longtime MasterMine users, I'm sure you know that there's the reporting, the sort of reporting core of MasterMine has been there all along with the pivot tables and the ability for end users to, in a moment's notice, move fields around and do different things with their data, just in display mode. And some years after we launched MasterMine, we also added this the Updater capability, the ability to actually mass update from inside of Excel. Some of you may have that. I'm guessing that most of you have at least one user who takes advantage of Updater to manage your GoldMine data, so I won't get too much into the details of that. And in fact, in February's webinar, we went into quite a bit of detail really about using Updater specifically for the data management aspects of GoldMine administration. Today what I want to really focus on is some other topics that really have to do with the practical, the sort of universal practical management of GoldMine. And I'll in a moment here I'll put up the agenda of specifically the topics that we're going to talk about. Before I do that, I just want to say a couple words about our MasterMine end user community. The last time we had our webinar a month ago, we invited you to give us a little bit of feedback as far as what kinds of things we could do in our end user meeting that would be most useful for you in terms of learning more about how to use MasterMine. And one of the things that I wanted to aim toward was a situation where it's not so much me lecturing to you in a one-way communication, but really trying to open it up a little bit, despite the fact that we do have some fairly large numbers of people who participate, but to try to open it up a little bit for you to be able to communicate your particular interests and concerns and things that we can potentially help you with. And so we suggested these three possible alternatives to the the straight lecture approach here, to actually have what I call an open problem-solving meeting where people could actually share screens and talk about what was there, and actually show their own screen, asking people to actually show their own screen with MasterMine up and presumably your own data visible theoretically across the web to other users, not really capturable because it's all video, but for just bearing in mind, I guess, any concerns you might have about confidentiality. But if that's not an issue for you, to be able to actually address your problems directly, control your screen, that's that top option there. A second level that we thought might be possible would be sort of an open mic where we make it at least possible for everybody to raise through audio, ask their questions. And I mean, the idea here would be not just get answers from me, but get answers from each other and ideas from each other about best ways to use MasterMine to manage your GoldMine better. And that third thing was more just sort of like a round table where we wouldn't actually show anybody else's reports because of that concern about confidentiality. And I'm not going to ask that question again. I just wanted to sort of let you know that we did have some pretty good feedback about that. Of those who actually answered the question in the survey, we had 6 who were interested in the topic roundtable possibility, which is what I would say is sort of the least intrusive or the least threatening, maybe. I mean, some people just don't want to talk in front of other people, so there's reason to demur because of that. But the open problem-solving option, which is more along the lines of what I would really hope for, is the ability to actually bring somebody on. We'll do a little preparation in advance about what topic you can talk about, or what MasterMine report that you've created in the past that you'd like to share, and talk about how it's used. We had 5 people who sounded like they're willing to do that sort of thing. They may not be also on this same meeting today, so I'm just getting an idea of general interest. But it sounds like the point is, it sounds like there is a genuine interest out there in us having much more of a give and take, and potentially have some more interesting kind of interaction as far as the usage of MasterMine, as opposed to just me lecturing. So we will pursue that in the future, and we'll contact those of you who expressed an interest in the past. If you're on this meeting and you were not one of those who told us in the past that you'd be willing to sort of share your in a live environment your existing MasterMine reports and talk about ways that you use them, or even ask for other people's suggestions about best practices and best ways to use that information, I think that would be a great way to do this, to do some of these monthly end user meetings. So if you have an interest in being a presenter in one of those, please contact me or Carnegie. It's rob@mastermind.net, or Carnegie, C-A-R-N-E-G-Y, @mastermind.net. And we'll talk with you a little bit about it and work it out so that it all works smoothly for you. And if you decide later on you don't want to do it because you just feel too nervous, that's okay too. But just let us know if you're potentially interested. Okay, with that, let's go on to our agenda for today. GoldMine admin and data management tasks is the sort of general rubric that we're operating under here. Now, when I say that, I may have a very different idea about GoldMine administration than you do when I use that phrase. I just sort of, almost as a test, I ran that phrase past Carnegie earlier to just say, well, what do you think of when I say GoldMine administration? And the list of things that she gave me, and I'll come back to this later on, didn't really overlap all that much with what I've chosen as being the specific topics to show you or to talk about today. But these 4 that I've got listed here, these are sort of the key ones that I identified initially in my own, as I think about GoldMine administration, as being key things that are probably relatively universal among GoldMine users. Things that you need to consider if your main concern is, I want to have my GoldMine be configured around our particular processes, our particular way of doing sales or of marketing or customer service. I want GoldMine configured around it, and I want the data of GoldMine to match that configuration. Despite the fact that, I don't know, maybe we've been using GoldMine for some time and we used to use it a different way, so we've got a bunch of junk data in there. What are we going to do about that if we decide on a new way of using GoldMine? Well, MasterMine and Updater are key tools in making that efficient transition from using GoldMine a different way to using it the way you want to do it, to use it now. Plus, of course, adding in the reporting at the end and so on. So these are the topics that I'm going to try to handle on the agenda here. I'll talk a little bit about managing GoldMine meta information. That's the data about the data that's in GoldMine, the things that affect your user interface but aren't necessarily the data that you look at every day. In other words, your lookups, your field lookups, what alarms people have got set or alerts, the members as members of GoldMine groups, which some organizations use a lot of groups and generate a lot of groups and then don't really have good ways of cleaning those up afterwards, and others of you don't use groups at all, so I'll try to be sensitive to that. Then there's the kind of the more general kind of data management issue, and again, I'm not going to go too much into things that we just covered a month ago, but finding important gaps in information that you consider really important is, of course, one of the things that you would do at the GoldMine administrator level, that where there may well be end users who are responsible for that stuff, but what do you do as the administrator to make it easy for those people to actually manage their segments of the data to make sure that they are filling in what they're supposed to fill in, or that data that comes in through importing or through web imports also gets cleaned up in order to fit in with the rest of your data. Finding, filing, and deleting junk data. I actually covered a fair amount of that again in our webinar last month, but I've got a couple of other additional thoughts on that today. And then finally, reporting from logs. And that's something that we've, as far as I know, never covered in a user user meeting like this, but there's some really useful stuff there that helps you as the GoldMine administrator to just oversee the GoldMine environment. Who's using it? What fields do we have that are, what end user, configurable or custom fields do we have that may not be being used, or of the ones that we do have in there, what are the most recent times they were updated, that kind of stuff. Synchronization, something else that you have to monitor at the GoldMine administration level. So these are some things that I'm going to try to cover today. Let's go into those right now one by one, and then we'll come back to what I want to do is leave some time at the end here to give you a chance to express your own GoldMine administration challenges and some specific ways that we might be able to be helpful with you. I'm going to show this one slide here that just kind of might be an idea starter for you as you think about, because again, at the end of this, what I want to do is ask you to put your own suggestions into the GoToWebinar dialog here for GoldMine administration topics that we're not covering today. These are just idea starters here, some things that I typically think of under the rubric of GoldMine administration. Some of them I touch on a lot, data cleanup and so on, in other webinars. But whatever you've got as a specific challenge of your own, love to have you enter that into the question dialog here toward the end. So with that, I just wanted to kind of give you that that kind of visual idea starter thing, and then we'll switch over and go live with MasterMine here. All right, so over to GoldMine. Why am I not seeing GoldMine here? Oh, there it is. There we are. Okay. So, and I actually meant to close these reports that I was just doing as I was practicing for our thing here today. So, got a little free preview there. Okay, back to GoldMine. So, starting with issues of GoldMine administration. So the first sort of area that I was looking at was managing the GoldMine meta information. So lookups, alarms, alerts, members of groups, and so on. There are various reasons that it's important, of course, to manage those things. The first one that I mentioned there, lookups. Lookups, of course, I'm referring to, what are the values that you allow in your lookups here. Now, lookups used to be a very simple proposition. It was just simply a list of the possible things that you could enter into the score field. But as many of you may know, GoldMine did add eventually, they added record typing probably before most of you either started using GoldMine and some of you were born, but they also added this ability here relatively recently to have the lookups be dependent upon the value in another field. So for example, in this case, we've got in the key 3 field that's called score, 4 possible values that only show up in this list if the contact type is prospect. And you might have different lookups if the contact type is something else. So for example, we might go up here and say, well, that's not a prospect, that's a customer now. And having done that, now we go and look in the lookups, and lo and behold, those aren't there, but a different list, a different set of possible scores could be there. Now, if you're not doing that in your GoldMine already, that's understandable. You probably, this gets into that whole process, hopefully, that you go through once a year or so of rethinking how do we use GoldMine, how do we want to use it, and how do we take advantage of some of the customization that's available in GoldMine. If you don't know about these kinds of customization, that's why you have your GoldMine dealer. Contact your GoldMine dealer and tell them what you would like GoldMine to do for you. You don't have to explain to them down to the nitty-gritty. You'd like them to put this and that value in here, eventually you will, but at the start, it's really you need to think about your GoldMine from an administration standpoint as a pretty shapeable, malleable tool set that that's probably more configurable than you ever thought it was, because you just don't think about these things from day to day, because you have your own business to do. talk to your GoldMine dealer about this stuff. Anyway, it's a bit of a tangent there, but what I wanted to aim for was just the fact that you can use your MasterMine tools to actually manage these relationships, because it's otherwise a little bit difficult one by one to go in here and just do an example here. I'll add, so when key 1 is a customer, we should have some other possible values in here. Maybe it's X, Y, or Z if it's a customer. I'm just kind of throwing this together, but top customer is the first one, and you can see one by one I can add these in here. Bad customer, no such thing as a bad customer, right? But anyway, so I just wanted to add those in there, and this is by way of showing that you can wind up with a lot of lookups in a field, and in fact you can import lookups from other fields, but when you import them, you get, of course, what they meant and what they looked like for that other field, and then you're going to want to go through and change them, and again, one by one, editing what you have in there can be a little bit difficult. With the MasterMine tools, it can be pretty nice to have a nice set of tools for that, and I'll show you that here right now. So let's create our first MasterMine report here, and so as I do this, there's a couple things that I want those of you who are not really experienced with MasterMine already to pick up along the way. So what I try to do in here is always is first, of course, to talk about the main topic, GoldMine administration in this case, but also show you some tricks that really apply across no matter what topic you're talking about. So to start with here, let's talk about, this is the MasterMine dialog for creating new reports. Many of you have probably either created reports using just the default sign screen, choose pending activities and choose which type of activity and finish and off you go, and then you never see the create dialog again. In this case, what I want to really point out in here is templates, and of course, we've got a long list of templates that are built in here. What you may not know is that if you right-click in the template window and sort, instead of sorting alphabetically by all of the templates, but sort instead by Toolkit, you will see the MasterMine templates grouped by the types of usage that you might put your reports to. And of course, a certain template may actually apply to various kinds of GoldMine usage. Alarm calendar, for example, fits under activity analysis. It's something else that we're going to talk about in relation to GoldMine administration. But so the Toolkit thing isn't it isn't a hard and fast thing, like you can only use this report for one purpose. But they are organized in a way that's meant to make it relatively convenient for you to find what you need. So just to sort of illustrate, now that I've sorted these by Toolkit, note that our first toolkit here, activity analysis, has quite a few leads built, or quite a few templates built into it, and so you can find sales management reports and so on that are good for analyzing leads, reports that relate to constant contact, and then GoldMine administration reports, and these are just in the toolkits themselves are alphabetical. So I'll just kind of quickly glance through the rest of these and come back to the GoldMine administrator toolkit. So we've got IntelliClick related reports, the main ones, marketing, some miscellaneous things that relate to opportunities, that relate to projects. We've got some user-defined ones that were saved and presented here or saved as template and presented here in a group. QuoteWorks related to templates, sales management, and then we're down to the bottom of the list here. Oh, and service case templates. So I'm actually going to go back up to our GoldMine administration toolkit, because that's the one that we're focusing on today, and to just talk a little bit about, well, actually I'm going to use this to find the lookups report that I want to use as my first illustration here. So this is my report again that shows me lookups. Now this is going to be a report across all the lookups in our GoldMine system, not just the ones that are available under a certain record type, or not just ones that are maybe visible on the top of the screen at the moment. This is all of the lookups that are in the system. Now lookups are a little bit they're off the beaten path as far as what you may think of as data that you manage on a day-to-day basis, especially if you're an end user who's not a GoldMine administrator, but we assume that people who come today are probably GoldMine administrators or as close to that as you've got within your company. So this is the default view that you get when you run your lookups report. It shows you all the fields in GoldMine theoretically, and some of these field names are going to be a little bit cryptic, and I'll try to decrypt them a little bit for you. But these are by field name and then what lookups are available for each one of these fields. Now you may not have known it's even possible within GoldMine to know what are all, in one view, what are all the lookups that we have, but there they are in fact. Now, so some of these are should be fairly obvious. Now the first thing you probably notice is, key 1. Well, what is the key 1 field? In GoldMine, key 1 is the top of this group of 5 fields. Most of you, my experience would say 98% of you, if not all of you, actually have your own unique labels on these fields, but under the covers, these 5 built-in fields are called key 1, key 2, key 3, key 4, key 5, and the contact type field has, the certain lookups that I showed before, and the key 3 field in this case is score. So little trick in MasterMine you probably already know is if for whatever reason the MasterMine template isn't or can't be built in such a way that you that it assigns the end user field name to a field, you can always go to that field and just type over the one that's there. So in the context that I happen to be looking at the MasterMine report, so in other words, looking at the GoldMine interface here, in this context, this field is called score. Now it could be that I've got record typing set up in GoldMine such that when this says prospect or this says vendor, that this label actually says something else besides score, even though it's the same field, key 3. And that's why in the process of creating this lookup report, we can't just assume that the name of that field should be score. So instead, what we give it to you is by the underlying field name, key 3. But in this context, I've just decided I'll type over this one and I'll just call that one score because that's how I know that field. And as you can see, here are the 3 new possible values that I added into the lookups that I just did manually here. And there really aren't actually that many fields in the lookup table in GoldMine. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, probably already more detail than you wanted. But just in case, so here we've got, so because of the way that record typing is set up, we can tell these are the ones for if it's a prospect, these are the ones if it's a customer. And this kind of view will help you to really, the bottom line on this is it'll help you to really understand what lookups you've got set up in GoldMine and to quickly know, if nothing else, what do you need to go in there and manually change so that your lookups more appropriately reflect the way end users use GoldMine, so that they can more effectively and quickly select among just the actual, possible key 3 values or score values for prospects versus customers and so on. Now, a step beyond that, and I'm not going to go into this too much more, is to say, this is fine if there's 3 or 5 possible scores for each one of these, but what if there's 30 or 50? How are you going to manage those better? The more there are, the harder that is to manage manually because you can only get at them one by one in the regular GoldMine interface. But if you've got MasterMine and you've got Updater, you actually can do something like this. I'll roll up the score ones just so I can get them into a drill down here. And again, imagine there were 30 or 50 of these. You could actually go through and use your Updater to, let's say, let's say I duplicated these because I made a whole bunch of new ones and I want to assign new values to these, and I want to change these from being affected where prospect is the master value to where it's suspect. It's kind of an arbitrary change here, but what I'm mainly wanting to illustrate is, okay, have those come up. So what we're saying is have these come up as the lookups for the score field, for key 3 field, when the master value in the key 1 field is suspect. The difference here would be I'd be updating all 4 of these in the lookups, and again, that could be 40 or 400 of those. I'd be updating the lookup table, which is available here through updater. Many of you may not know that because you hardly ever get to that, but there's all the tables that you work with in GoldMine are available here. And it's a pretty straightforward thing to go and just say, oh, let's update those on the GoldMine side. So there I've actually changed those values in GoldMine. So now if I go back here to GoldMine and I go to do a lookup, those are coming up because it's customer, but as I do the show all, you see I've updated that master value to suspect, and now those will only come up if suspect is in the contact type field. Okay, a little more of a tangent than I wanted to do on lookups. Second thing I wanted to cover.
There is a question about lookups really quick.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
He says, Monica's asking, what if we need to delete a score type from the customer value? I'm assuming delete things from the lookup.
Delete lookup. Yes, you could just as easily have gone. I could have gone through here rather than update these. I could have selected, let's say, these three we wanted to eliminate from the lookups. Updater would allow me to do pretty much the same thing. I've already got the lookup table selected here because that's what I did last time. But if I go up here and say delete and say delete the subrecords from there, and as long as things come up here right, which they did, so we've got the lookups and it'll be the record IDs that do the deletion. Now I'm not going to do this because I want to keep that data in there, but that's all you would need to do to delete those extra things from the lookups. Yeah, it's actually quite a good way to clear out the lookups. I mean, everybody on here probably has some fields that have just completely gotten out of hand where you've got way too many lookups because people have, over the years just added things but nobody knew how to take them out, or they didn't bother to take them out one by one. This is a great way to sort of clean the slate and get started anew. Good question. Okay, second topic I want to talk about is alarms. This is something that I've talked about a number of times before, and I think that it's one of the great things about GoldMine is that you can keep everything in one place. You can have your calendar of activities of things you're going to do. You can have it raise alarms for you of things that need attention that even weeks or months ahead are going to need attention at a certain time, and you can build it into your work process. To say, well, I'm going to make, any given day I come in, I've got 10 to 20 calls that I'm going to make, where it doesn't really matter what time of day I'm going to make those calls, but I've got another 5 where I've got an appointment. I know that I want to call this person at 10 o'clock because that's when they're going to be available, and this other person at 12 o'clock. That's a great thing, but I'll bet you the majority of people on this call don't actually use the GoldMine alarm system. Now, why don't you use the GoldMine alarm system? The reason is it's overwhelmed. It has a bunch of pending calls in it that if you just left them on, every time you log into GoldMine, the alarm mechanism or the alarm screen comes up on your screen, and you see 20, 25, 50, maybe hundreds of past due pending things that you were going to do that you set an alarm for. And at some point you just got yourself into a habit of turning it off automatically when you went into GoldMine. So you've basically deprived yourself of the alarm mechanism in GoldMine. Well, how do you manage that? You can manage it for yourself. Your GoldMine administrator potentially could manage it for you, or let's say you're the sales manager, sales assistant, or IT manager, and you want to basically make that alarm capability available to your users again by removing all that overwhelming data. Well, you have to be a little bit subtle with it. You could just simply turn off all the alarms all at once. Let's go ahead, and I'm just going to run the alarm calendar report here. Oh, actually, you know what? I want to do alarms by user because I just like that view a little bit better. So I'm going to run the alarms by user report, and what it's going to show me is, and you can do this too, and like as soon as you get done from this call, you can go and run your own alarms by user report, and most of you will probably have an eye-opening experience. And what you'll see is something like this. This is the basically by year and month of when items, not that they're scheduled to happen in your database, although some of them are, but these are just the ones that have the alarm flag set to yes, meaning these are all pending activities that have an alarm set to, to go off in the person's system. And as you can see, in this case, we've got some people who've got lots and lots of past due, oh, shame on Rob, lots of past due pending activities with alarms set, and guaranteed this user and any one of these other users that have a lot of past due alarms just don't use their alarm system anymore because it just doesn't work for them anymore. Even though somewhere, theoretically in their process, they do use it. So how are we going to manage these? We could just simply turn off the alarms for all the past due ones. That would be sort of a ham-handed approach, but I prefer to think that this can be done on a much more subtle basis. We could do it for certain users, for certain types of, maybe not turn off the alarms for all of their leads that they've got alarms on, maybe just for the ones that are not customers, or maybe reset the ones that are for customers to all happen, change the alarm date on it, leave the alarm on, but change the alarm date to today or in the future. Lots of ways to manage this data so that the alarm system becomes more useful for them. And I won't go into too much more detail on this except to show you one trick, which is really we're interested in the ones that are in the future, right? And so currently it's March of 2016. We might want to take all the ones, let's say, that have alarms earlier than from 2015 backwards, and turn off the alarms for those, or do those for a certain user. So how am I going to get at those records so that I can do that? That would be a matter of filtering. So first, let's go in here and just turn off the ones that are set for the future, 2016 and 2017. So I'll leave myself with only the ones that go from the beginning of 2015 and backwards. We can use other subtler means to do something that doesn't coincide with year boundaries, but use that. And let's say I want to take all the ones that are past due alarms for Rob. That would be a very straightforward thing of double-clicking. There's going to be a field in here for the alarms record, or for the in the alarms report, where it's called alarm flag. So these are all set to yes currently, but we could just set them to no and run updater against the alarm flag field. Or we could take the alarm date on these and set those to different alarms or different dates so that they're just all in the future at some reasonable time when I can handle them. Or maybe what I want to do is use updater to reassign these pending activities to somebody else who will handle them more effectively because they're just, obviously they're important things that needed to get done, but they didn't. Maybe all I need to really do is go to the calendar record, the user ID on the calendar record, and reassign them to a different user and have them take care of this stuff. So lots of different ways of managing, sort of mass managing these apparently important activities and taking care of them. Now another possibility, of course, is to take them out of our system, either delete the entire pending activity. I've seen people do that, and of course you want to do that very carefully. You might want to do that for one user or one particular type of records as opposed to just, again, ham-handedly doing that for the entire system. And Updater will give you the ability to manage that on a pretty fine level. So if it's just the ones that I've highlighted, I want to actually delete those from the system, I could do that. Here I'd be deleting them from the cal table actually. So I can turn that on, that would delete the entire pending activity. Cancel that. I'm going to delete the entire pending activity from there, or maybe what I want to do is actually take these pending activities and just complete them over into history so I don't lose track of the fact that they were there, but still have something in GoldMine that indicates that something may or may not have happened with them. So I've seen people approach that in both ways. Use your tools, of course, in the way that makes the most sense to you, or maybe even better if you're the IT person, do it in a way that makes the most sense, let's say, to the sales manager before you mess up their calling activity. Okay, so that's really all I want to do on the meta information. Let's see. I think I mentioned about doing the other thing on the meta information was things like group members and so on, managing those. If that's an issue for you and you'd like to see some examples of that, give us a call and we can talk about that for you as well. Because those who use groups, some people use groups just religiously inside GoldMine to accomplish things, or even use the GoldMine groups to assign follow-up on leads for all their new leads that come in. Some sales managers really use that as a very hands-on way to manage the leads that are out there. There's great ways to use GoldMine that way. Next main topic that I have here is finding gaps in key information, and this is one I think I'll be able to illustrate pretty quickly. In this case, let's do just a regular main contacts report, and I'm going to include the score field. So let's take this as our scenario. We've got data that gets imported, we've got data that gets hand input into GoldMine, we've got web imports, we have various ways that information flows into our GoldMine data, and some fields are more important than others. It's really important to us, let's say in our hypothetical situation here, that our sales reps follow up on every new lead that enters the system and put a score on it, A, B, or C. How good a lead is that? That allows us then to score all of our lead sources. It allows us to monitor our web imports. When I say web import, of course I'm talking about the form on your website that when people fill out to download your information, it also feeds a record right into your GoldMine. If you've got that working, if you don't have that working, again, talk to your GoldMine dealer and make sure that your web forms do talk to your GoldMine, because it saves you a lot of manual work getting information into GoldMine. And of course, you can use your updater to import that information. If you don't actually have it programmed already to flow right into your GoldMine, you can use the whatever reports you're getting from your website that indicate here's all the people who filled in your form. If that's coming to you in Excel, you can use your updater to actually create history items in GoldMine and so on. So there's that in the interim until you get your web import working the way you should. But back to our scenario here, we're interested in finding key fields like the score field where that field didn't get filled in. Either didn't get filled in by the web import itself, or it hasn't been filled in by the sales rep who was supposed to follow up on this lead when it came in. How do we make sure that we've got those filled in? Well, of course, just make a report that includes that field. So here's the score field, and this could be, of course, any of your user-defined fields that you check on here. And we'll just quickly do a MasterMine report that includes that field. And what we're going to look for here is, again, which score fields didn't get filled in. Well, let's pull in the score field here. And I see I've got 30 records where the score field is blank. Again, this is just a demo database. You might have very many more of these. So my first question, based on knowing that, is, well, who's responsible for those? Do those 30, are those spread out across all our different account managers, or is there really just a couple of culprits in the system here? So I'll pull the account manager field in and do those as a column, and I can see, well, actually, all of those fall under a particular user, Tina L. So Tina's got 30 leads that she hasn't assigned a score to. Maybe they all came in today. Maybe they came in a long time ago. I might want to look at that in some greater depth. But the key thing is, from a process standpoint, for just managing these, is, well, let's drill down on those, double click on it, so that I see what are those 30 records that don't have a score attached to them. And I can just view these. I've got the date they were added into our system. Some of these are fairly old. Nothing visible from my list here that tells me why these weren't filled in. So maybe what I really want to do is just say to Tina, look, Tina, I've created this report for you that you can use to monitor maybe the score field and 2 or 3 other key fields that really need to have some data in there. All you need to do, Tina, is on a daily basis open up this report. It will refresh while it's opening. You'll see the ones that you've left blank, and you can actually go in here, and here we might actually set this up just for Tina. So let's do a Tina version of this report. So Tina, your job is to look at all these, and maybe we can show the actual companies that are in there. And your job, Tina, is to take all these ones that you have not assigned a lead to, assigned a score to. By the way, you can also look at the ones that you have assigned and make sure that these really are A's and these next ones really are B's, in your own judgment. But the ones that are blank, again, open this report on any given day, drill down on the ones that are blank. Actually, you could actually go in here and say, yeah, I talked to this guy, that's an A. I didn't talk to this guy yet, but most of these I've already talked to, and I can assign the appropriate score to them. Now, you could go one by one to them. The ones that you've failed to talk to already, you can drill through to, double-click on it, and have it pop up in GoldMine, make the call, put in a score, or look at the notes and figure out, yeah, actually, that I've already talked to them, that one should be a C, and so on. And then once you've assigned your scores across all of these, basically, highlight the column and do your updater, as appropriate. Hit OK, and then like that, you will have cleaned up a whole bunch of records in GoldMine. Now, your first pass after you train your sales reps to do this stuff, they're probably going to find a lot of leads that are out there, probably more than you think. And before you look, you don't know. But when you do, you'll find that if you get this stuff down to a process, suddenly you no longer have leads falling through the cracks that really should have been followed up on. And things will show up in your reports where they're supposed to, and people will have more confidence in the GoldMine data and so on. It's all a virtuous circle once you start to really manage your GoldMine data better. Okay, that's filling in gaps. The next area that I had here is finding, filing, and/or deleting junk data that's in your database. I already talked about that process of really the process is the same as when I was talking about alarms, where you might take, remember we talked about past due alarm records, but you could just as easily run your MasterMine template for past due pending activities. There's one in here. Let's call it, look for the word past. I just know it by the name. So there's a past due activity. There's actually a few past due reports built in here. There's past due cases if you're using the cases module in GoldMine. A lot of tools in here that are built for GoldMine management. Again, they aren't necessarily under the GoldMine Administrator Toolkit. Like this one's in the Sales Management Toolkit. This one's in the Case Toolkit. But you can see it's fairly easy to find these using keywords in the search field. And once you hover over it and you see on the right-hand side the description of, well, what does this report actually do? Pending activities dated before today, by user, and type of activity, and standard contact information. So it would be very, very easy for you to just run that template, have your past due pending activities in front of you. Again, you could, on just a mass basis, delete them all out of your system, or you could be a little bit more subtle about it and focus in on, well, ones that are past due by more than a certain amount of time, that are assigned to a certain user or set of users, or that have other characteristics where it makes sense to delete them versus file them into history, or whatever the sensible thing to do with them is next. Okay, finally, logs. This is one that I think scared up a lot of interest when we put out our invitation, because I know people are interested in knowing, for example, who's using our system. Back to GoldMine. Who's actually making use of it? What fields are being used? Who's synchronizing? Who's not synchronizing? There are a number of log reports built into here that make it easy to manage this stuff. And I'm apologize for hurrying here. I really want to leave a little bit of time to get your suggestions, and that will help to feed our user events in the future. So log reports, put in the word log under search, and you will see that there are several log type reports built in here. History log analysis, that's for fields that you've got that when you update them, they create logs on the history tab. There are MasterMine templates for actually doing your reporting from using those history log fields. I'll bet you most of you, if you have not actually used these log analysis reports in MasterMine, probably have never really made very good use of the logging that GoldMine allows you to do under history. Sync logs, of course, looking at synchronization for those of you who still do that. The two kind of areas that I really wanted to focus on here, the user log report, that's one of my favorite ones, because people ask me once in a while, how do I know if people are actually using GoldMine? especially if they're not here in our office working with us. I can see if they're logging in or not, and by which I mean you can actually look at, in GoldMine, you can look at the pegboard vision in GoldMine, or view in GoldMine of your calendar, that actually allows you to see who's logged now, but it doesn't really give you much in the way of historical information about who logged in when, how long, how many times did they click or punch keys in there, and that can give you a much better idea of who's actually using the system. So I'll give this as an example. I'll do the user log report. We'll come back to the transaction logs here in a moment. User log report, I'm including the keys and clicks fields here, and we'll run this report. And the standard view that you get from it is going to be this right here. And so there's actually, we put a little bit of extra instruction right at the top of the screen here, because this is one that people sometimes aren't, it's not immediately intuitive how you might use this pivot table to look at user logs. But let me just move that message over here. So what it's saying is select whichever user you're interested in. So I've got Rob here selected, and I've got the current year, and it's broken out by weeks, and it's actually showing me by each day within the weeks for the current year how many hours has this person been logged in. So this is a demo database here, so you're not seeing every day filled in here, but pretty much every day that I worked should show me how many hours I was in, how many hours Rob was in, logged into GoldMine, from the first time that day that they logged in to the last time that they logged out, if they logged out during that day. If you don't log out during the day, then of course, if you don't have a set procedure for people that says log in and log out every day, log in as soon as you get into work, log out as the last thing before you leave, then that's going to skew these numbers a little bit. But if you direct your people to do that, to behave this way, it's not too much to ask people to log into GoldMine pretty much as soon as they walk in, or to log out before they leave, or even to set up in GoldMine an automatic thing that logs everybody out at the end of the day. Then you can have some useful information that flows out of this. And this will give you, how many hours did that person work each one of those days, and you can kind of manage this from there. I added in this keys and login data because I wanted to sort of give you a little view of, here you can tell not only how many hours were they logged in each one of those days, but how many keys did they click. So if they show that they logged in at the beginning of the day and they logged out at the end and there were no keys clicked, or there were no, did I drag the wrong, I actually dragged the wrong field into the data area here. I actually wanted the clicks dragged in there. So here's the total number of mouse clicks, the total number of keys they hit, and how long they were in. So some of this looks realistic. I mean, you can look at this and probably at a glance know whether somebody's realistically at least making active use of GoldMine based on, did they actually click keys and mouse clicks. Okay, so I'm not going to go into that in any more detail, but of course there's lots of implications of where you can go with this. So just think about not only how can I use this particular view of this, but what other information might we be able to relate that to in GoldMine that helps us to understand, are we really following up on our leads, are the sales reps, are the people who are remotely working, getting things done as they should, and so on. Okay, so that
have a question, Rob.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a report I can use to see what fields are in GoldMine and if they're being used and the last time it was updated?
Another great question. Yes, there is. In fact, that gets to the transaction logs. So there's in this version, the most current version of GoldMine that's out there. These are the templates that are available here. We've actually, in the version 9, you'll see some of this stuff expand as well, where we have more transaction logs that get to other parts of GoldMine. But for what's currently available, you actually, so let's say you're the administrator and you're, as Carnegie's, as the questioner asked about, as the question you're asked about, you may be the GoldMine administrator of a system that's got lots of user-defined fields that you're not sure whether they get used or not. And maybe you want to eliminate those from the system, or you want to repurpose them or something. The transaction log report here will actually give you a quick overview of all of the fields in your system if they've ever been used even once. Well, to the extent that the data is still in your transaction logs in GoldMine. So, bearing in mind that, of course, if you purge your transaction logs once in a while, it'll only go back as far as your transaction data still are in there. But in this case, let's take, so this is a report that shows by contact 1 and contact 2, the two main contact level tables, how many, or basically how many transactions affecting each of these fields have occurred within, since the transaction logs were last purged for the year 2016. If I go and drop the year in columns going across here, this actually gives me, in a 20,000-foot view, all the way back to the year 2000. So I guess our transaction logs really go through quite far back in our demo database. All the number of transactions in each one of these fields. So for example, if I just take, well, let's go down here to some user-defined ones. uCust stats, a user-defined field that may or may not actually still exist in my GoldMine system. Of course, the transaction may be there even after the actual field itself isn't in my GoldMine. But for the most part, it's a one-way system with GoldMine. You put user-defined fields in, but there's no obvious way to take them out. We could talk about that in a separate session. But here's an example of a transaction that was last, or in a field that was last updated in the year 2000. Well, there's a pretty unused user-defined field that could be repurposed or removed from the system, where we can see other ones, more recently used. So that's kind of a quick view of those fields and some things that you might do with them. So what I want to do is, we're right near the end of our hour, and I think it's been my feeling is that it's been a pretty good one content-wise, but it hopefully will have raised even more questions for you than it answered, and I want to give you all a chance to give us a little bit of feedback about what other GoldMine administration challenges you might have, and I'm going to go over and switch back and show you that screen again. And I want to give you a chance, if you've got any, I realize it's a tough question off the top of your head during a webinar to ask you to do this, but you decided to come to this webinar because you are a GoldMine administrator, or because you are hopefully want to assist your internal GoldMine administrator with the tools that you have available to you. By the way, it is certainly possible to have your GoldMine administrator, if they don't already, get MasterMine, get a updater license, get an additional create license. Once you've got your first one, the other ones are a much lower price, so it's worthwhile spreading that capability around. But so if you can just sort of think of what GoldMine administration challenges do you face, whether it's these ones that I covered here today, or actually I wanted to, here's the other slide. These are again meant to be kind of idea starters that would be good for us to handle in end user webinars, or if you've got ideas about other tools within MasterMine that might be useful, other functions that would be useful, where you think, oh, I can get all that stuff into a report, but what would be a good tool that would help me to actually manage that, with a couple of buttons that would make a lot of sense to do from inside of MasterMine, or what would be a template that would help me to oversee or understand a process in GoldMine so that I can manage my people better, or manage some process that we do on an ongoing basis. What would be some good, and you don't have to describe it to us in that much detail all the way down to the solution. In a way, I just really want to know what challenges do you face that we can help you with. Okay, so I think I've talked through that enough, and as you think about those, or if you think about them afterwards, send us an email with those suggestions or questions, and we'll try to incorporate those into future events here, or into the product itself. Okay, so the last thing is our attendee drawing, which we of course do every week. We offer you the opportunity to, but just by attending a MasterMine end user webinar all the way to the end, you have the possibility of winning a free 1/2 hour consultation, which the lovely Carnegie Hodges will draw from our set of from our attendees today. And Carnegie, are you ready for the drawing?
I am so ready. I even have a name.
Already picked. Okay.
Our winner today is Tommy Rainey.
Tommy Rainey. Okay, congratulations, Tommy. So all you need to do is schedule with Carnegie. Carnegie, I think you'll reach out to Tommy and schedule that up.
Yep, I'll give you a call after, Tommy. And
okay. And if you were not today's... Sorry?
Said I'll just reach out and let him know what he won.
Oh. Okay, excellent. And if you were not today's lucky winner, you always, as always, have the opportunity to contact us, to have us work with you on whatever thing that relates to MasterMine that would be useful for you, using our regular support mechanisms. If you don't know about the support, learn about it more online at mastermine.net. If you do know about how that works, either way, contact us and we'll be happy to help you to accomplish whatever you need in your GoldMine administration, in the GoldMine administration realm. All right, with that, Carnegie will sort of monitor our question dialogue here a little bit, just in case there's any others that you want to put in there. But other than that, we want to thank you very much for coming and working with us today on your MasterMine. As always, it is a pleasure to work with the GoldMine user community, or the GoldMine user community, but the MasterMine user community in particular, and let us know how we can help.
Rob, there
yes.
is a question, and I'm not sure if it's one that we're going to be able to answer on here, but okay. It says, what if I have 20,000 blanks in the mail email, and you want to cross-reference this with the undeliverable Excel of bounce emails? Maybe I'll need to call separate.
So, well, no, that's not too bad, I don't think. It depends on what you consider to be undeliverable. So if you've been using a product like Constant Contact or IntelliClick that tells you that something's undeliverable, and you want your report to show, I mean, it's a great question because you really should do that. You should, if you're doing email marketing, one of the main things that you want to, one of the main reasons you want to be getting that feedback information back into your GoldMine is so that you can manage the ones that you're just not reaching because they're undeliverable or they've opted out or whatever.
Yeah, I got it from a Salesforce. It looks like an exported list from the Salesforce undeliverable.
Ah, okay.
So
wait, from Salesforce undeliverable? Okay. So the question would be, where is that data in GoldMine? If it's actually associated with the email address record itself, the consup record, it might be in the notes of the consup record, it might be, or of the email record in consup, or it might be in the merge codes field in email, or it might be, someplace else actually at the contact level or the user level. As lots of places it might have been put when you did the import into GoldMine. Wherever that is, you'll want to include those other fields with your MasterMine email address report. I'll visually switch over to MasterMine here for a sec. So we'll just start sort of in the direction that this would go without going into it in too much detail, but there is built into MasterMine some email templates as well that you can use for managing them. By the way, there's one for managing bad email addresses. It actually goes and finds the ones that are malformed. It doesn't find every possible way of being malformed, but some key ones. So that would be one way of going at those undeliverable addresses and getting those fixed. With your updater, of course, there's a tool built right into Updater that specifically addresses email addresses so that you manage those properly, because again, as I mentioned before, you can have multiple email addresses associated with one contact in GoldMine, and so are you sure that you're hitting the right one and updating it? So there's a number of different options there within Updater to help manage those. see, the other thing I was going to point out was just the email address list. This would give you every email that's in your system, and presumably would also allow you then to include, if it's in the email notes, for example, that the unsubscribe shows up. That's not one of the email notes is not one of the fields that's on here by default. But if we go over here to the other EM fields, there's your notes, and you could include, probably in this case we just want one segment of those, or to include, I think in this case, the merge codes. So the email merge codes are included already in the default template, and that basically would be it. That would allow you to correlate the email address itself with that unsubscribe, and then move on from there to whatever your sensible process is going to be for managing that. Okay, do we have anything else, Carnegie, that you think we ought to handle in this session?
I think that's about it. I know Bob was asking if the transaction log reports are the transaction log reports stock.
If they do what?
He said, are the transaction log reports stock is the question. So I'm assuming, does it actually come with the software?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, everything that you see here right now is in the current version, in the market version of MasterMine. If you don't see it in your own MasterMine, then you may not be on the most current version, which is 8.0.146. So get your software updated, and you should have it there. And I found that under help about, as you always do. Okay. Well, with that, thank you all very much for taking the time to visit with us again this afternoon. It is, as I say, always a pleasure to work with MasterMine users, and I hope that we will be able to do those more interactive presentations in the future, and that you will join with us and go ahead and kind of speak up and share your directly the things that you've discovered that you can do with MasterMine, or questions you have about MasterMine, and be able to help each other out with answers. And once again, thank you, Carnegie.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.